Hello, everybody, and welcome to the District of Squamish. This is the regular business meeting for the District of Squamish for Tuesday, June 18th. Hall Squalin plus Tuktamuk plus Squamish Okmeo. Welcome to the traditional and unceded territory of the Squamish Nation. Please be advised that this council meeting is being live streamed, recorded, and will be available to the public to view on the District of Squamish website following the meeting. If you have concerns, please notify the corporate officer present at the meeting, which is Ms. Wells this evening. Could I have someone move adoption of the agenda, please? Moved by Councillor French, second by Councillor Hamilton. All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you. We have no delegations, petitions, or proclamations this evening. Item 4 is consideration of unscheduled public attendance. So if anyone has a matter that's emergent in nature and needs to be thus needs to address council before our next regular scheduled meeting, this would be their opportunity to make a case for that to happen. I see some hands. I'm going to go with first past the post. So I saw we'll start over here, and I'll run everyone through the process of this piece. So this mechanism is here to, your first opportunity is to make a case as to why tonight you would speak tonight at the meeting, not so much to make whatever the point is that you're looking to address with council. So once we've heard that, council decides whether that's appropriate or not. So that'll be voted on, and then we go from there. So you have 2 minutes to present as to why it's timely this evening. That's the first piece. And then we'll get into the content later in the agenda where appropriate, should council accept that. So that's the process, and that'd be the same for whichever the matter is. So we'll start here. If you approach the mic and start by stating your name and then you have 2 minutes to address council.
My name is John Orr. I work for Paradise Trails at Squamish. Tonight, council is considering first 3 readings and 4th reading, is my understanding, on an amendment bylaw to downzone a property that we're working on. And I'd like to have the opportunity to address council and to discuss what we've been doing and why we think the amendment bylaw should be defeated.
Okay. Thank you for that. Ms. Wells, sorry, yep, go ahead.
Because this was advertised and it wasn't an opportunity for a public hearing, and it was stated in the public hearing notice that there wouldn't be an opportunity for public input, I would caution council against hearing unscheduled public attendance related to this item for reasons of due process and procedural fairness.
Okay. So we heard a request and a caution from staff. Council, do we have? I'm looking for guidance where council would like to go from here. Councillor Pettingill, you look like you have a question or comment.
Yeah, clarifying question. Is this issue one that with the new housing legislation where a public hearing is not required or not permitted?
I believe this is one where it's not required. It's not the one that is prohibited.
Okay. So council, we've heard from someone that would like to speak on this matter. We've been cautioned by our staff on this. Is there appetite to proceed despite the caution, or heed the advice? I suppose if we wanted to hear from folks on this matter, we need a mover and a seconder for this. Otherwise, we don't need to take action would be the defeat, or schedule a public hearing, I suppose, or some other matter, but some other approach. But Councillor Hamilton?
I'm going to move that we hear the speaker.
Okay.
And I'll speak to it if seconded.
Yeah, thank you. I'll second it for discussion. So go ahead.
Thanks very much. Council hearing views of the public is very important. This is a different scenario. This is the views of a developer. A developer is approaching us, which is a slightly different scenario. I am hesitant to put forward this motion to hear from the developer in this forum because unscheduled public attendance, this is not the designed purpose of unscheduled public attendance. But when I ask myself, can we afford 5 minutes or 3 minutes of our time or 2 minutes of our time? I do think we can afford 2 minutes or 5 more minutes of our time to hear from this developer. So with that, I acknowledge the advice of our corporate officer. I also think that if we should be changing our public attendance, unscheduled public attendance policy, we should do that in a more fulsome manner than in one-off.
Okay, Councillor Pettingill.
Yeah, I'm not inclined to support my colleague. I believe a number of my colleagues have had in-depth conversations with the proponent, and so I feel I've had a chance to review and understand. I think my understanding is that our understanding of the guidance around when it's appropriate to do a public hearing or necessary versus unscheduled public attendance and so on is evolving, and we're trying to always improve our processes. And I think, in some other cases where I think it seems maybe we have been over accommodating, there's also always at the end of the day a public hearing, and so there was a general public opportunity with notice and so on, and that is not the case here. And so that, together with the staff advice and the meetings I've had, make me uncomfortable supporting this. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments on this? Councillor Greenlaw?
I won't be supporting either, just given the fact that we have recently come under some scrutiny for being too lax with our public attendance, with our unscheduled public attendance. And I think that we should rectify that moving forward.
Okay, thank you. Councillor French?
Thank you, Mayor. I won't be supporting the motion. One of the reasons is that this particular proponent is prolific and extremely good at sharing information. I have received a significant amount of excellent documentation, and I feel like I wouldn't be hearing anything new in an oral presentation tonight, so I won't be supporting.
Thank you. Any other comments before I venture mine? This is an interesting piece. We had some, I will say we had some applications to appear under our delegations, petitions, proclamations process, which speaking a development or a group speaking on a development doesn't fit in that piece. So this piece on scheduled public attendance is that opportunity when appropriate for council to entertain hearing from folks in the community, and it was my understanding that this would be an option. But now I've heard from our corporate officer the nuances, and with each matter that comes before us, it's a slightly different context and slightly different procedure, depending on many factors, including whether there's a public hearing and so on, and that's all named or that's all done in the name of and kind of counterintuitively, honestly, in this case, of procedural fairness and giving everyone the opportunity to speak or not. So I think that if we want to hear from the proponent and or the community writ large on this, then there's a decision somewhere around having a public hearing where that opportunity would exist more fulsomely. So, yeah, so I'm going to, as much as I was the seconder for that discussion, I haven't heard a compelling argument to move against our corporate officers' efforts to keep us on side procedurally. So I won't be supporting. So with that, I'll call the question. All in favor? Councillor Hamilton is in favor, and opposed. Councillor Anderson, Pettingill, Greenlaw, French, and Mayor Herford opposed. Motion fails. So I would say that I do have some names on a list as much as I realized is here. I didn't see that when I went for hands. So I think we've addressed the topic. So if there's anyone on a different topic, I'm going to say this stands for our on this topic. Is there someone that would like to speak on a different topic? Oh, sorry. There I go. I'm here. Is there anyone that wishes to speak on a different topic? Yeah, we'll start here. Mr. Levine, same, again, 2 minutes to address council on why the matter you'd like to speak to is urgent, and I would encourage it to be a different matter. Thank you.
Hey, good evening. I represent the owners of Hop Creek Farms, and I'm here. I would like to make this unscheduled representation to talk about the new agricultural land zoning. We've worked with the District of Squamish planners, and it was a very good process. However, we believe that this is just the first start of the step in the right direction. And I wanted to take the time to be able to speak to the process that we had with the planner and how it was such a great opportunity. And the planner was really open in listening to all the agricultural land owners' concerns. And we discussed it. And I think we've put forward as part probably a really good comprehensive new zoning that is going to be discussed on tonight. So I do want to, while I appreciate all the hard work that's gone into the zoning, that's only one bylaw, and there's a few other municipal bylaws that I would like to bring to your attention, almost like a good research report. This is further work that needs to be done. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to ask, oh, sorry, Mr. Levine, can you just state your name? I know, but can you state your name for the record, and then we'll have a discussion.
Jeff Levine.
So I'm going to go to the corporate officer quickly just to double check on this. This feels very similar to the first request. However, unscheduled public attendance is after, in our agenda, is after that topic. And it sounds like this is a knock on from that. So do we have the same risk if they were to speak following, if this request was granted, if it was to stay in its currently scheduled position, which would be following adoption of or following discussion of the bylaw that Mr. Levine is looking to speak to? Do you follow my question? So it would be one of these earlier bylaws, but then unscheduled public attendance is item 19 or something on the agenda. So it would be fall after. Does that pose a risk? You know?
It doesn't.
Okay.
That doesn't pose any risks procedurally.
Okay. So this is so this would be consideration of Mr. Levine's request falling after the discussion that we have around the property. So it's like a next what next steps could be or something like that, rather than speaking to the motion itself. So that's the differentiation I'm going to make with this request from the last one. Although if it was otherwise, then we'd have the same. If it was to speak before and to the zoning, then we would be in the same position we were with the last item. Does that make sense to everybody? First of all, Councillor Pettingill?
Yeah, just a question. I'm not sure if I can ask the delegate, is that the right term, for a question of clarification, because as per your comments and what I heard is that this is these are knock-on things, whereas I would expect a degree of urgency, which doesn't seem to be here. And so it's, I think, a filing an application to appear would make more sense in this. I'm not clear on the urgency, especially if this is going to be discussed at the end of the meeting. And so can we ask for clarification on that, or what's
Mr.
the?
Levine, can I get to, and thank you for that, Councillor Pettingill. That's a great point. One of the pieces was why it's tonight and not in 2 weeks or some subsequent meeting for a next step. So could you speak to the urgency of this matter?
Sorry, this is an urgent issue. Hop Creek Farms, as you all know, has gone through a development permit process, and we're running into roadblocks within that development process that is directly attributable to the confusion or misinterpretation of the Agricultural Land Commission Act and the Ministry of Agriculture and how they treat agricultural properties within the agricultural farms and the definitions of farm use, farm buildings. I'm not here to talk about the actual motion that's forward. I'm talking about how, as a council and Hop Creek Farms, can better work together with staff to affect the purpose without having to waste a considerable amount of time and resources, because we're right in the throes of this development process.
Okay. Thank you for that additional context. Council, we've heard why the applicant, for lack of a better phrase for this piece, is would like to be heard this evening, and following the matter that the zoning discussion, so that we don't have the same issue that we had in the first conversation. But Councillor Pettingill?
Yeah, I'm left with another question. I apologize, but it seems to me in this process, if we agreed it was urgent, we had tonight, there'd be 5 minutes we would hear and basically just listen. If this came in as a request to appear delegation, there might be a committee of the whole, and a more fulsome discussion might not happen as quickly, but it's maybe a more constructive process. And so I guess I'm looking for clarity from the delegate if it is that 5 minutes tonight that is where the real.
I think that's maybe for us to understand what, more so than to anyone in particular. So I think yeah, if someone wants to move this in second, then we can work our way through it. Otherwise, we can leave it to another process. So are you moving it, Councillor Hamilton?
I'll move it, yes.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor French seconds. You want to speak to it?
I think that the notion of urgency is debatable. So urgent on what timeline, and maybe debatable isn't the right word. Perhaps unclear is the right word. I do understand. So we are doing first 3 readings of this bylaw. That's reasonably. That's quite a few readings. That's in one go, and so I see this as a significant change happening fairly quickly, and I think that it is I think it is valuable for us to hear what the folks impacted by this bylaw, how they're being affected by it, and what they're going to see as potentially coming next or important next steps for them. So
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify, I think is that we actually have third reading and not adoption of that particular bylaw tonight. So it actually, sorry, I think our earlier comments, I was being a bit optimistic on just where the timing was in the agenda, but because we're not adopting, I think we're in the same place. So I'm going to go to Ms. Wells. Sir, I just noticed that this wasn't one of the ones that was up for adoption. I thought we were doing third reading and adoption.
Yeah.
So we're in the same, does that leave us in the same place, Ms. Wells?
Sorry,
I'm sorry.
I wasn't sure clear on which bylaw it was
yeah,
at first.
sorry.
But I've just confirmed with staff that this is another item that is a discretionary public hearing. And again, notice was provided for this. And in that notice, it did indicate that there would be no public input opportunity, and that it's always open for people to submit written letters, but again, this is to stay on the side of procedural fairness. It wouldn't be appropriate for council to hear from
Okay.
members of the public at this time.
Sorry, I was in my advice earlier. I was a bit optimistic that I was overly optimistic that this was an item that we were going to grant readings to and potentially adopt prior to the public participation piece. I will say that so I won't be supporting, but I do think that having through my work at the SLRD, where we actually deal with the ALC work more frequently than we do here, as evident by the parcels that we're discussing tonight. When it comes to the ALR, there's not many. So I know that there's a lot of nuance with this area, and I would welcome a conversation and perhaps engagement in another way. But this isn't the spot tonight. But that doesn't mean that the matter is not important or urgent to the individual. Just I don't think I can support us putting our process offside while trying to get the next step right. So so I won't be supporting. Any other comments on this before I call the question? Councillor Greenlaw?
I tend to agree with Councillor Pettingill's comments. I wonder if this is better served in an application to appear before council. I do think it's important to get this information and have these conversations. But again, I'm a little bit wary of stepping into unscheduled public attendance based on the advice from our staff.
Yeah, thank you. And I think that during the conversation around that particular item, we can ask what the next steps are and how folks that are interested in those next steps can engage, rather than presuppose what those opportunities would be. But finding a way to create those opportunities to get this feedback in the appropriate way is important. So yeah, thank you for that. Seeing no one else clamoring to speak to this, I'm just going to call the question. All in favor? And opposed? Councillor Anderson, Pettingill, Greenlaw, French, and Mayor Herford opposed. Motion fails. Thank you. I saw another hand. Chief, yep. Go ahead. And again, if you focus your comments on why the matter is urgent this evening and take into consideration what you've heard already. Thank you.
Yeah, Chief Dale Harry, one of the 16 chiefs from the Squamish Nation. I guess one of the things I really want to talk about is, if it's 2 minutes, and I think it's urgent, and supporting the fire brigade up there and supporting Paradise Trails. It comes something that I was involved in council many years ago. It's unfinished business for the nation. It's unfinished business for the proponent, and it's unfinished business for the district. And we do have over 60 support letters from the Squamish Nation. And I shared it with many of the councillors here and the mayor. And I think it'd be really good that we be listened and be heard. And one of the things is that I see when there's a fire up in Cheekeye or Paradise Valley or the Squamish Valley, there's an imaginary line that the district of Squamish won't go. Fire department won't go. We had a fire at mile 9, and you know what? And the fire department said it's not in our jurisdiction. So I think we need to. I'm here not to go up and fix a blame, but I want to fix a problem. And the problem is we need fire protection, a fire brigade to look at wildfires. Because I think it's going to be a long, hot summer. And I think we should be listened and we should be heard. I'll see him.
Thank you. So I think I say this, the speaker spoke to the urgency and also took the opportunity to make a submission, but we'll so we have the advice stands from our staff. If anyone would like to move otherwise, I see no mover or seconder for this, so therefore it doesn't pass. I do but the matter, that topic I'll be sure to raise during when we get to this matter. Is there anyone else on any different matters that would like to address council this evening? Seeing none, we'll move on with our agenda. Sorry. Yes, go ahead. You're. We have to go to the mic and sorry. If you could start with stating your name,
Hi.
and then you have
So
2
I'm
minutes to address council.
To the urgency of this being heard from all of us that are here who want to speak and why it is tonight. I feel it's as good as time as any. And the urgency is, you know, like Dale said, summer's coming and there's a lot that can be heard from us that can make for better the taxpayers in the valley, the residents of Chikai, and I believe that we're very lucky that the bushfire we had out there, that somebody was doing a backyard bush burn and it jumped and it made for the forest, and it could have been really bad for all of Squamish. And if there's no district for fire hall out there, there needs to be one. And I hope you guys can hear what we have to say more on that tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, sorry. Did you start with stating your name and just?
Alicia Newman.
Okay. Thank you, Alicia. I just wanted to make sure we got that on the record. So, council, we've had this discussion. Is there anyone that would like to move at this point to hear from Ms. Newman? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on with our agenda. We have no public hearings this evening or scheduled timed items. We have the consent agenda, and I just wanted to pull item C1 from the consent agenda. Is there anyone else that wanted to pull anything? Go ahead, Councillor Pettingill.
C2, please.
C2. Okay, thank you. Anyone else pull anything? If not, I'll look for someone to move the consent agenda. Are you moving the consent agenda? So with those 2 items pulled, Councillor Hamilton moves, Councillor French seconds. All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. And we'll deal with those 2 items in their appropriate spot. We don't have anything under consideration of council committee recommendations. We're on to 9A, first 3 readings of bylaws. And we have our staff here to present on the first one, which is District of Squamish zoning bylaw number 2200-2011 amendment bylaw for agricultural 1. This is number 3054. And I will turn it over to staff to introduce themselves and the project.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name's Asia Philp, planner with the Community Development Department. Tonight, I'm presenting the Agricultural 1 zone for council consideration of initial readings. Objectives are to present key aspects of the Agriculture 1 zone, which I'll refer to as Agri 1, and review the 5 agricultural land reserve farm properties that we are proposing to rezone to the Agri 1 zone. Throughout the presentation, I'll be using several acronyms, and I'll do my best to clarify these right from the get-go. I'll refer to the Agricultural Land Reserve as the ALR. So the primary drivers for the creation of the Agri 1 zone are to align the district zoning bylaw with the Agricultural Land Commission Act, which I'll refer to as the ALCA for short, and Agricultural Land Reserve Use Regulation, which I'll refer to as the ALRUR for short. The district has a legislative responsibility under the ALCA to ensure our bylaws are consistent with the ALCA and the ALRUR. The current rural zoning that covers most of our ALR land within the district has inconsistencies that have led to the need to update the zoning. The second and related driver are our various policy directives to update the zoning. The 2 main policies directing this work are OCP policy 26.4C, listed here, and a very similarly worded recommended action from the Squamish Valley Agricultural Plan, both calling out the need to update the zoning bylaw to align with the ALCA and ALRUR. So I wanted to touch briefly on why, just beyond meeting our legislative requirements and policy directives, we are doing this agriculture zoning work. The challenge of preserving farming both locally and across BC grows with each passing year. ALR lands are facing increasing pressure from urban development and encroachment. The district has a role to play in both preserving the community's agricultural land base and in creating a regulatory environment that supports local farms and food production. There's a related driver to this agriculture zoning work, which is tied to the Easter Seals property highlighted here in red. In 2021, Easter Seals made a non-farm use application to the ALC to allow for the Easter Seals Camp Squamish to reestablish outdoor education camps in partnership with Mulgrave School. The application was considered and endorsed by Council in 2022 and forwarded to the ALC for their consideration. In 2023, the ALC issued a decision on the application approving the camp use specifically for the 1.9 hectare camp area highlighted in yellow on the map here. One of the conditions of the ALC approval was to amend the property zoning to ensure consistency with both the ALC decision as well as with the ALCA and ALRUR. And this condition has been captured within the Agri 1 zone. The Agri 1 zone was drafted following the ALC and Ministry of Agriculture's bylaw guidelines. Staff worked with the ALC and Ministry staff to ensure alignment with the legislation. We also reviewed the Squamish Valley Agriculture Plan and the SLRD Area D Agriculture 1 zone to ensure a consistent approach was taken around residential uses and development footprints, as well as around tourist accommodation uses. Key aspects of the Agri 1 zone include updating the definition of agriculture, adding accessory agriculture definitions, which included agritourism and several farm product processing facilities, uses from the rural zones that are inconsistent with the ALCA and ALRUR were removed, including 2-unit dwelling, pet daycare, and short-term rental. Siting and size restrictions were added for residential uses, including maximum lot coverage, maximum floor area, and maximum setbacks from roads to ensure a compact residential footprint. And lastly, riparian setbacks for agriculture buildings were added to the zone as the province's riparian area protection regulations do not apply to agricultural uses. These setbacks were reported in directly from the Ministry of Agriculture's bylaw guide. So staff are proposing to rezone lands to the Agri 1 zone that are within the ALR, are actively farmed, are larger lots, and are within the serviced area of the district. We're taking a phased approach, starting with a limited number of actively farmed properties, and this allowed staff to consult directly with the landowners of each property. Staff intend to work on rezoning other ALR lands in the district in future phases when we have the capacity to engage with the large number of ALR landowners and also to address the more complex land use situations. The 5 properties proposed to be rezoned to Agri 1 in the first phase are listed and shown here. All properties are 0.8 hectares or over in size and have rural residential 2 RL2 zoning. All properties have some form of active farming on site. Staff worked with the ALC and Ministry of Agriculture staff to draft the zone to ensure that it complies with the legislation. Staff engaged to the IAP2 level of consult with the owners of the ALR lands proposed to be rezoned. Staff met with a couple of the owners in person and engaged with the other landowners through email correspondence. Feedback from the owners was considered and incorporated into the new zone where there wasn't a conflict with the legislation. So staff recommend that council give first, second, and third reading to Amendment Bylaw 3054 to add the new Agri 1 zone to the zoning bylaw and align it with the ALCA and ALRUR. Also note that Bylaw 3054 also proposes to rezone the 5 ALR properties covered in this presentation to the new Agri 1 zone. And with that, concludes my presentation, and I'll pass it back to the chair for questions and discussion.
Thank you. Council, questions on this? Councillor French?
Thank you, Mayor. As I'm reading this question, I wish I had a little bit more specific information, but I'm hoping you're gonna know where the question's coming from. Did the agriculture people get back to staff about the picnic wording suggested by one of the landowners?
Yes, through the chair, staff did respond to the landowner and we worked through the picnic area endorsement, which is part of the farm alcohol production facility accessory uses. And
Okay.
the bylaw has been updated to reflect that.
All right, my next question is, what's the logic of restricting the use of asphalt and gravel?
So the guidance comes from both the ALC staff and Ministry of Ag staff in that it's hard to convert back to farmable land when hard surface, which it consider gravel to be a hard surface, to convert that back to arable farmable land.
Okay, thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Other questions? Councillor Anderson.
Ms. Phelps, you have referred to the non-farm use application that was addressed by council in July 2022 and subsequently addressed by the ALC. That footprint involves, well, there are some farm uses at the present time and tenants there that are feeling a bit insecure. My question to you is that in the context of the present bylaw that we're considering this evening, is there any assistance to alleviate their feeling insecure on that property? That is, will the Mulgrave education entity, is there a win-win? There was perceived to be a win-win when we addressed this in 2022, but do they continue to need to be using that remaining property for farm use, for agri use? Is that something that arises in the present bylaw? How can these current tenants feel a little bit more secure about their future there on that farmable portion?
Through the chair, can I clarify with Councillor Anderson, are you referencing the tenant being Mulgrave School? Or the farm use,
The farm use, please. Yes, if I may be more clear, local roots and neighbors.
Yeah, through the chair. So staff consulted with the base landowners, being the Easter Seals representatives. We did send a copy of the draft bylaw to the tenants and also to the Squamish Can and Food Policy Council Executive Director. We didn't receive any feedback from them, and so I'm unsure of what insecurities they might have because it hasn't been clarified to staff. However, the bylaw as drafted allows for a wide variety of farm uses and aligns correctly with the ALC Act. So as long as the tenants are operating within the legislation of the ALC Act and ALRUR, then they're on side with the bylaw.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hamilton.
Yeah, thanks. I've got two questions. So we've got one of the properties. There's I don't know exactly what stage it's at, but the Hop Creek Farm, we saw a development permit application for that use for the alcohol, the cidery use, production and sales. Does this bylaw change their ability to move forward with their development permit in any way?
Through the chair, this bylaw supports what they're trying to do from a use perspective and then outlines the criteria that they need to meet for their brewery that is in line with the limits that the ALC sets through their legislation.
Great, thank you. I'm a big fan of making policy align when it overlaps. And one question on that, in the bylaw, we've got there's some new definitions being added, and many of them just say means and use under section 11 of the agricultural land use regulation, BC regulation. But one of them says one of them is farm product retail sales. And there's a larger description there than just basically means whatever it means in the ALR use regulation. Does our bylaw deviate from the farm product retail sales, deviate from the ALR use regulations regarding farm product retail sales? Or is that just an artifact of writing the bylaw?
Through the chair, I'm trying to recall why I drafted it as such. I believe that the ALCA or the ALRUR has a definition of farm product retail sales, and so I pulled that and put this into our bylaw. Whereas in contrast, some of the other processing facilities that are listed here don't actually have a definition from the ALC Act or the ALRUR, but it's a good description of it. And so that's what I've referenced in the definition here. So I'm trying to align it as closely as possible so there's minimal room for misinterpretation.
Okay, so we're not deliberately deviating from the farm product retail sales in the ALUR, right?
Okay, this is an acronym heavy session here, but any other questions before I venture a few of my own? I'm wondering if by taking this action, we're creating any legally non-conforming uses on any of these parcels.
Through the chair, in terms of residential uses, I don't believe we're creating any non-conformancies. That being said, for Hop Creek, the size of their residential dwelling unit may be beyond, but it was constructed before the ALC Act changed and restricted the size of the residential homes, and so they already have legally non-conforming status through the through the provincial legislation. And I don't believe that we're creating any other non-conformancies.
Okay, thank you. And then is there anything here that goes further than the ALR, or is this, I'm hearing alignment throughout your presentation and the discussion so far. I just wonder if there's any area where we're going further than alignment, which would be the minimum in my perspective.
Through the chair, so it's not necessarily looked at as going further, but the ALC allows local governments to have discretion to regulate in certain areas. So there's certain uses that we cannot prohibit, but that we are allowed to set regulations around. And the ALC doesn't provide any further direction on what those should be. And so in those situations, staff did review other municipalities' recent agriculture zones that were referred to staff by the ALC staff, being like, hey, these are good examples, take a look at these. And we did draw from some of those to set some parameters around the additional, like the farm processing facilities that you see further down in the use criteria.
Okay, thank you. I was just going to ask for an example, but that's a good example. Okay, that makes sense to me. And then we heard earlier, Mr. Levine, in his application to speak this evening, was talking about some urgent sort of next steps. And the next steps I see in the report are addressing different properties, aren't necessarily further refinement of this policy. I guess, are there other pieces of this coming on these properties or ALC work in general that we should refer that type of feedback to, or is that an opportunity that needs to be created if council saw fit?
Through the chair, I'll answer and then I'll pass it on if Jesse or Jonas want to add to it. But our next steps are the next phases of focused on the zoning. not necessarily other bylaws that Mr. Levine had mentioned need to come into alignment that affect other departments or under the umbrella of other departments. So within the planning department, we're certainly still focused on the zoning alignment and tackling some of the other properties out the Paradise Valley, et cetera. But not specifically turning attention to what Mr. Levine referenced in looking at the other bylaws that are outside of kind of the planning department's work.
Okay, thank you. And did anyone else want to comment on any of that stuff, or is that future maybe OCP related work, or is this another matter that I'm?
Through the mayor, this would be another matter.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for our staff? We have recommendation before us as well. Yep, go ahead.
I'll move the staff recommendation.
Thank you. Second by Councillor French. Thank you. Any comments on this? Councillor Anderson, go ahead.
Yes, first of all, I wanted to comment on the, we've been delivered through our package all of the input provided by different stakeholders, and I just wanted to compliment staff's responses to each of those briefs that came from stakeholders. I found them to be good orientation and very satisfying. Secondly, as I look at the policies that are to be district policy, council policies that are to be satisfied or addressed by this initiative, I'm reading under prepared for the future in our strategic plan. The Agri 1 zoning project supports strategic plan action item 4.2 as it encourages farming and other agricultural uses that fall within the green economy agriculture sector. What I wanted to observe is that this is not enough. I referred earlier to the case of the Easter Seals property, and related concerns passed on to me. The concerns are regarding displacement, potential displacement, and space constraints also. There just isn't enough room for those businesses to grow and thrive there. So they and others are looking for lands elsewhere, and in particular, industrial lands. We don't have a lot of agricultural land that's accessible and available for farming on the other side of the river and so forth. So I'd just like to pass on that if we want to satisfy this objective for our green economy agriculture sector, it's just another reason we need to go to work on addressing our industrial land supply. That is the land supply that these growers are looking at, and they're struggling to identify parcels. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments on this? I'll just take the opportunity to thank staff for working diligently to bring this forward and to align our policies. I know this is an area that's been evolving, and it's important that we stay current there. So thank you for that. It sounds like we did hear some comments tonight around sort of desired next steps, and I'd invite Mr. Levine to meet with me, and I'm happy to listen and figure out, see if there's a path forward on those particular pieces. So please reach out to that, and we'll schedule that. But in relation to these bylaws at this time, I think that aligning to the good work done from the LR is totally appropriate. I'm happy to support. So with that, I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Next up is item, where are we? 9A2, District of Squamish Zoning Bylaw Amendment Bylaw, and this is related to Tantalus at Paradise Valley. This is number 2974, 2023. We've got our staff taking position here, and when they're ready, I will turn the floor over to them to introduce themselves and the topic.
Thank you, Mayor Herford. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Brian Daly, planner with Community Planning or Community Development. With me this evening are David Rolston, Senior Manager of Infrastructure Planning, Jonas Valeniskis, Senior Director of Community Development, and Jesse Fletcher, Manager of Current Planning. We're here tonight to present a district-led rezoning application to rezone an unaddressed parcel in the Paradise Valley from Comprehensive Development Zone number 52 to resource for consideration of first 3 readings and adoption. Tantalus at Paradise Valley is the name of a former subdivision contemplated on a large unaddressed parcel on Paradise Valley Road. It has more recently been referred to as Paradise Trails. The property was rezoned in 2008 to allow for an equestrian center and 82 rural residential lots. At the time of the rezoning, the applicants were required to construct a dike to protect the property from flood hazard, given that a large portion of the property is located in the primary floodway of the Cheakamus River. The property owners have yet to submit a subdivision application to the district since the property was rezoned in 2008. The property owners have been engaging with staff regarding submitting a development permit application for protection from flood hazard, DPA2, but have yet to provide a report that addresses the relevant DPA2 guidelines. The subject property is located in a restricted densification area and has a resource and recreation land use designation in the official community plan. As previously noted, at the time of rezoning, the applicants were required to construct a dike to protect the property from flood hazard, given that the large portion of the property is subject to flooding from the Cheakamus River. The development application was not completed following the rezoning, and the province no longer approves new privately maintained dike infrastructure. So staff are proposing to rezone the portion of the property with CD52 zoning to resource to align the zoning with the OCP land use designation, flood hazard related policies in the OCP, and recommendations in the Integrated Flood Hazard Management Plan. I will now pass it to Mr. Rolston to speak more on the Integrated Flood Hazard Management Plan.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The Integrated Flood Hazard Management Plan was completed by the district in 2017. It reviewed flood hazards from all of the different sources of flooding within Squamish, and it demonstrated that the Paradise Valley, most of the Paradise Valley would be flooded in a major event, including the single access and egress route into the valley would be inundated with water and unusable. Based on the hazards that were identified in the Integrated Flood Hazard Management Plan, a mitigation strategy was prepared for the Cheakamus River Valley. One of the foremost strategies was to avoid development within the Paradise Valley and also not to build diking due to the extensive costs of building as well as ongoing maintenance. The Integrated Flood Hazard Management Plan also recommended to restrict densification within the valley through rezoning and to maintain the rural character of the valley. The proponent has completed 2 flood hazard assessments for the development. The first was completed at the time of rezoning. This was completed by an independent qualified professional, Lacasse Consultants. The district commissioned a peer review of that report that was signed and sealed, and it was concluded that the design flood was a 500-year debris flood with a 2,840 cubic meter per second flow rate. That concluded that the site is exposed to extensive hazards and that diking would be required to provide for safe development. In 2024, the developer, Mr. John Orr, submitted a report, a flood hazard report, and also commissioned a peer review that was not signed and sealed that significantly downgraded the hazard to a 200-year clear water flood with a design flood of 1,320 cubic meters a second, or less than half of what had been previously identified at the time of rezoning. And it concluded that there's minimal flooding of land and minimal diking required. So this report in 2024 significantly downgrades the hazard from the developer commissioned report in 2012 and also the district's Integrated Flood Hazard Management Plan.
A land development agreement was registered on title in 2012. The agreement outlined phasing requirements and required amenities, none of which have been provided to date. The agreement was silent on a volunteer fire department. Staff have followed up with the fire department regarding the possibility of establishing a volunteer fire department in Paradise Valley and was provided with the following information. The Office of the Fire Commissioner does not permit fire brigades to be formed as a half measure. A fire department has to be fully certified under the provincial standards and have the authority to do so within a local government or fire protection district. The district has a collective agreement with the IAFF union for staffing. Adding a separate fire department within the District of Squamish could be viewed as contracting out of services. A fire hall price tag would be in the neighborhood of $14 to $16 million, as the ground is similar to the Tantalus site, but more at risk of catastrophic flooding. Squamish Fire Rescue does not have plans to establish a fire hall in this area at this time. A third hall will be triggered with a large-scale development north of Ross Road, where there is a large enough population to satisfy a volunteer pool of responders. Paradise Valley does not have a sufficient population to support a fire hall. Fire apparatuses are in the range of $1.4 to $1.7 million each for a new fire engine and take roughly 3 years to build due to a backlog from COVID. And currently, Paradise Valley does not have a municipal water system in place and thus does not have a hydrant system for firefighting water supply. Large-scale developments in this area would be required to have a certified water system supply system in place for firefighting water supply. Staff introduced the proposed zoning amendment to the affected landowner to solicit feedback. The landowner was not supportive of the proposed amendments. A public hearing is not required for this application because it complies with the OCP and is a non-residential application comprising less than 400 square meters of floor area as per the Land Development Procedures bylaw. So staff are recommending that bylaw number 2974 be given first 3 readings, and that following the 3 readings, that bylaw 2974 be considered for adoption. That concludes the presentation. I'm happy to take questions at this time.
Thank you for the presentation. Who would like to get us started with questions? Any questions at this point? Councillor Pettingill?
Yeah, thanks. I understand from the correspondence there is a fair bit of back and forth around development permit area 2 reporting and permit application, which basically, as I understand it, effectively would allow for a qualified professional to weigh in on whether or not the site could be made safe within our regulations for habitation. But that would not make this, we would still end up, even if we sort of accepted a development permit application or granted a permit, that would not make this site consistent with the zoning consistent with the OCP. There'd still be a misalignment there. Is that correct?
Through the mayor, yes, that's correct.
Sorry, I think what would be helpful for this conversation, just for everyone's understanding, could you just use the acronym DPA2 around flood control? Could you speak to some specifics around that just to orient everyone that may be either in the room or viewing or view this in future, just about what the aim of that is and what some of the sort of pertinent pieces of the DPA2 are?
Through the chair, Development Permit Area 2 is a component of the district's flood policy framework. Our policy framework falls under the official community plan, which has overarching flood policy guidance, our floodplain bylaw, which regulates building regulations within the floodplain, and Development Permit Area 2, which is intended to maintain critical floodways through the community to ensure that we don't increase flood risk over time by congesting our rivers or our floodplain. So Development Permit Area 2 is just one element of our flood policy framework.
Okay, thank you. In your presentation, you had you compared a previous study from 2012, do I have the date right? And one from 2024 that showed different numbers. When things like that happen, what's the process for resolving discrepancies in reports? I would imagine that modeling improves over time, maybe information changes, but I'm not saying that's necessarily the case here, but how are these things resolved when they occur? Because this type of thing must occur every once in a while.
Through the chair, it is dependent on the situation. Typically, if there's a disagreement between a developer, a commissioned report, and a district master plan, there would be a peer review to review the report and any new information. In this case, given that there has been a peer-reviewed report completed already, that is likely not necessary. The Integrated Flood Hazard Management Plan is consistent with the 2012 report that was submitted by the developer. The inconsistent report is the new 2024 report, which has not been completed as comprehensively as previous studies.
Okay, thank you. The Do we have anyone from? I appreciate the slide around the fire hall. Do we? Is there any? Do we have someone that could speak to fire, sort of the fire question around? I'm curious about next fire protection for the valley. I think this is an adjacent issue to this, but I wonder if like what our emergency planning says about wildfire in the valley and how that's handled. Is this something that? Or sorry, you're flagging me down, Miss Glendale?
Thank you, Mayor Herford. While I appreciate wanting that information, that was not part of this particular bylaw, and so staff are not prepared to speak to it, but certainly could in the future. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. I appreciate the slide being included, but I can tell that there's some concern around this issue as so we'll move on from that line of questioning. The development permit application, so we've got is underway, we'll say, and we have this zoning piece. I wondered around, to me, if a development permit isn't achievable and for technical reasons just not able to meet the requirements, then this action of rezoning to something that's more appropriate that kind of makes sense in a perfect world. I know that we don't live in a perfect world and we're here, but how does this is there a risk to having that development permit sort of run its course, and if it's not achievable, then coming back to us? And just, I guess it's a timing. Why now, given that's the case? Could someone speak to the timing of these things, as this isn't a sort of common practice to end up in this sort of space?
That's a good question. Essentially, what we're proposing tonight is continued implementation of the 2018 official community plan. So once the new official community plan was adopted in 2018, the land use designations changed in certain areas, and we have been bringing year after year rezoning amendments that align the zoning bylaw with the current official community plan designations. And for Paradise Valley, we have new direction, essentially, that densification is not appropriate in this area due to flood hazard. The area is outside of our growth management boundary. That's why the designation in the OCP is as it is. The applicants did have an opportunity to apply for a development permit or subdivision. They chose to apply for a development permit for flood hazard. And staff have given some time to the applicants to make the application. However, as Mr. Rolston pointed out, the discrepancies between the information that we have and what the applicants have provided are quite significant. And so staff are proposing to council that, given the policy of the OCP and the misalignment, that needs to be rectified. I think the avenue the applicants will have, as any landowner has, is to come in and apply for a rezoning, or in this case, this would require an official community plan amendment and a rezoning if they wish to pursue this development.
Okay, and that would be something that could happen after, if they were able to satisfy the development permit, or it could be a new process that took into account current policy. Like, does the development permit need to proceed, or is this going back to a rezone and OCP amendment and that sort of thing, and that's the path forward, or both, either or, an option for the proponent at this point?
So the proponents, if council proceeds with readings tonight and adoption of the bylaw, the proponents still have procedurally are able to proceed with development permit review. And that would certainly involve another third-party review of the current report. But in practical terms, it's not really going anywhere, because if the zoning does not allow for subdivision in this area, the development permit won't supersede the zoning. But as any landowner, this developer can apply for another official community plan amendment and rezoning. But I will note that the current policy would not support an application for rezoning. So that's why there would have to be an OCP amendment involved as well.
Okay, thank you. And then in the matter of, I think it was rural residential use in a resource or like in a resource area, how does that interplay with the limited densification? And can you speak to that piece of the misalignment, which was one of the pieces in all this?
Through you, Mayor. So the resource and recreation land use designation does contemplate sort of recreational activities and sort of also resource extraction, but some kind of larger rural properties. But these properties would be quite large in scale, as most of them are in that area of the Paradise Valley. The lots that were contemplated or allowed under the CD 52 zone are significantly smaller than that. They're much closer to the size of the lots that you'd find in RS1 or kind of throughout the district of Squamish. So there was already some misalignment between the proposed rural lots that are allowed in the CD 52 zone and the typical rural lot size.
Okay, that's useful. And then in the matter of limited densification designation for lands, what does that interact with this rural designation as well? For that lot size, or does it say no additional structures period, or like how does this thing the overlapping I think is interesting and I don't quite get yet.
The restricted densification area, which is applicable to the subject property, essentially says do not increase density whatsoever in this area because it is subject to high flood hazard, and that resource and recreation land use designation is contemplating not densifying kind of at all. It's more resource extraction or recreational opportunities. It's reflecting that this land should be maintained for, uses that aren't increasing the number of people living in this high hazard area and are maintaining the land for flood conveyance.
Okay, thank you. Councillor French.
Thank you, Mayor. The presentation by staff included a table that is not in the staff report, and the title of it is Flood Hazard Assessment Table. And one part of that table indicates not signed / sealed. And this is in reference to the 2024 study that was done by the proponent. I think you touched on it in the report, but could you tell us more about what does that mean, not signed / sealed?
Through the chair, when a professional engineer provides engineering advice in British Columbia, they're required to sign and seal that report. That's EGBC documentation requirement. So the report that we have received is not signed or sealed. It's not clear if the report was redacted or what the case may be, but there's no signature or engineering seal. And the author actually was not a professional engineer registered within British Columbia.
Okay, thank you, Mayor.
So, sorry, no, I'm gonna need quiet in the we're gonna need quiet in the audience so we can proceed here, please. And with whatever the outcome is, we need to have quiet and decorum in the. So, please, I'm gonna have to ask. I don't want to have to ask you to leave, but we can't have disruptions of the process. Okay. So sir, we're trying to work our way through this complex matter and give it its due attention. We can't have another outburst. It's just not how this works. I understand your frustration. We're going to try to work through this. Okay. So, okay. We'll need to recess the meeting if there's another outburst till we resolve the issue or folks leave the chamber. So I don't want to have to do that. Other questions? I had Councillor Pettingill next.
Yeah, as I understand it, both the current OCP and then the current and proposed zoning all include equestrian as a use. As far as I can tell from bylaws and OCP, equestrian is really limited to, for example, the infrastructure directly related to horses. Do any of the definitions in any of those bylaws or the OCP imply any sort of residential support to equestrian, or is it strictly the equestrian aspect? Like, is there something implied beyond just horses and a horse, facility?
Through the mayor, there may be a provision that would allow for a caretaker dwelling associated with this use, but that would require a development permit. That DPA2 that we've been speaking about before, a building permit you would have to apply for that along with a building permit for the equestrian facility, as well as potentially a caretaker dwelling, but it's considered an accessory use, not the primary use. So the primary use would have to be the equestrian facility, and then there's quite strict limitations on the size that a caretaker dwelling could be on a resource or a rural residential property associated with that use.
Okay. Other questions, council? Yep. Go ahead, Councillor Hamilton.
I'm going to move the staff recommendation if there's no other questions.
You seconding that, Councillor French? Okay. Would you like to speak to it, and then I'll go to second.
Yeah, this is a difficult situation. I've spoken at length with the developers here, and in my mind, this is a situation where there was something that may have seemed appropriate over a decade ago. In the intervening decade, we learned more about flood hazard. Our community changes, our community priorities have changed, and very meaningfully, our official community plan has changed, and our community has focused on a growth management boundary in a very clear and distinct way. And I think that this, the CD 52 zone on that property is inconsistent with our OCP and our growth management boundary. And on those grounds alone, I support this rezoning.
Thank you. Councillor French.
Thank you, Mayor. This file has been a challenging one for me. I really feel for the landowner, and I'm thankful for the volume of information that has been provided by the landowner to me, and I presume everybody else on council. It is significant, and it really took something for me to get through all of it, but I did read it. I do understand it, and I think it was an important contribution to this process. And for many years now, the landowner has been caught in a push and pull between elected officials and District of Squamish staff. Recommendations from staff have been rejected by previous councils, despite the opposition in 2008 of then councillors and later to be mayors, Patricia Heinzman and Greg Gardner. Staff have consistently pushed smart growth, consistency of official community plan and zoning alignment with the regional growth strategy, strategic dike construction or not, maximizing efficient use of existing infrastructure, and promoting the construction of missing middle housing. And I'm feeling like it's time to rip the bandage off and let this landowner know that in the current affordability crisis, inside our climate change reality, this is not the time to build estate homes well outside of our growth management boundary. The risks of moving this proposal forward are just too high, in my opinion, for our community. And I'm not interested in having the district take on even more responsibility for more diking infrastructure and another huge stretch of road that currently is not in ideal condition. We have roads inside our growth management boundary that need improvement. I'd like to see us focus on improving those first. I support the staff recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Anderson.
Thank you. I will also be speaking in support of the staff recommendation. Over a considerable period of time, there's been clumsy and difficult communications between the district and the Paradise Valley Trails project proponents. I think this is very regrettable, especially because of the significant community interest in this particular project, notably in the vicinity of the Paradise Valley and among the residents of Chatham-Serve number 11. How the DPA2 guidelines compliance may be incomplete, whether or how much a portion of the property is in a primary floodway, issues with respect to the applicant's recent flood hazard report and its peer review, and the fire protection planning for the valley, that general issue. These are all have been difficult communications over each one of them. We have to learn better, all of us, to manage our disagreement and to also be mindful of perceptions and misperceptions around transparency on the part of the district as well. I think there's lessons to learn for all of us in this episode. I don't agree with all of my colleagues' comments on the issue of the growth management boundary. We have here a proposal for a destination tourism product, something with which our Tourism Squamish organization is desperately interested in, has been for some time. People forget that the Klahani resort proposal was outside of the growth management boundary as was originally proposed in 2005. We just forgot that and put it back in there again. I think that there are always trade-offs and benefits to evaluate. We have here road improvements, other things that have been discussed, and I think that sometimes some mixed-use development is a way to realize a particular destination tourism product. That's a scenario. However, I just wish the proponents good luck in trying to address that opportunity, and our planning staff have outlined a pathway, and that is, unfortunately, that's where we're at. It's a new rezoning and OCP amendment application. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments on this? Councillor Pettingill?
Yeah, I'm going to support the motion on the floor. I think, there's some disagreement between staff and council initially about alignment between the zoning, the rezoning that was received and the OCP. But there was alignment on flood hazard concerns. Since then, we've done a lot of work and updated our OCP, and so now the zoning was out of compliance with the zoning, which until the zoning changes, you can develop on it. But then also the proponent brought forward a suggestion that they, for possibly good reason, changed their mind about the hazard in the area and have tried to change the perspective on the hazard, and that has gone on for a while. But nonetheless, we've been left with, aside from the hazard assessment piece, a zoning that has for a long time now been out of compliance with the official community plan, which considers hazard and flooding risk beyond just what's in our DPA2. And I think, a lot of focus has gone on to the DPA2 piece, but that's only one small piece. And I think we are at a time, given the risks we are seeing and given the importance of many aspects of our OCP in terms of growth management, where densification is appropriate, I think it is appropriate that we align our zoning to the current OCP. And, we will be doing OCP renewals and reviews in the near future. There may be opportunity to reconsider some of that. I personally feel and have run on a strong feeling in support of our current OCP. I think it makes a lot of good sense. But at this time, I think it is time to align the zoning with our OCP. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Greenlaw?
Thanks. Through the chair, I'll be speaking in support of the motion as well. I too have found this conversation very difficult. The proponent has a perspective that does not seem to be in alignment with some of what we hear from staff. But upon staff's presentation, I am concerned about the validity of some of the information that's being provided by the proponent. And echoing my colleagues' comments specifically around development outside of the growth management boundary, flooding hazards, and alignment with our current OCP, those would be my primary concerns, my primary reasons for support. I would like to see a continuation of the conversation of our emergency response plans for the Paradise Valley fire response. because it is something that I'm underinformed about, and it is a concern of mine. I am concerned about climate change and increased fires down the valley, and I think that should be in front of mine to protect those communities. Thanks.
Thank you. So as many of my colleagues have stated, we've received quite a bit of information from the proponent, and coming into this meeting, I was hopeful that there was some a way to find some time to resolve some of the discrepancies that that were highlighted to us in the presentation. I find I found the answers to my inquiries quite compelling, and I think that with the flood challenge is, our primary role here, as I view my role in this seat, is to ensure the safety of the community, and that's everything from land use planning to ensuring that we have appropriate fire response and safe drinking water, all those other things that we're tasked with. So I think this is an issue that if the new work from the proponent receives the review, and this is the new reality of flooding in Paradise Valley, then that should be incorporated into, that should be peer reviewed and could inform our future policy going forward. But with what we have in front of us and what has been an extensive body of work that has been peer reviewed, both our initial integrated flood hazard management plan and the initial report for this site, I find a compelling argument to support the staff recommendation. However, I was hopeful that there was a way to give a bit more time to have those issues resolved. However, I will recognize that this has been a matter that's been before council and been outstanding since 2008. So some additional time at this point is a challenge. That's a tremendous amount of time. And as far as the community concerns around wildfire, as I hope to be able to speak to this a little bit more during the meeting, I think this is something that is really important. The public safety is extremely important to us. This is the risk from wildfire is something that we've taken a lot of action on, as far as having a wildfire DPA, which is how we ensure that the buildings, the development that we see is safe from wildfire. And we have extensive work with the on emergency response, and not just in isolation to ourselves, but jointly with the Squamish Nation and also with the regional district from a regional perspective. Fires know no boundaries. We know that. And the concerns of the Valley on this fire piece are important to me, and we can both communicate where we are today effectively. And we heard from our staff that what's proposed isn't something that's supported by folks that deal with fire and are in charge of keeping us safe in that respect. But I think there's work to be done there, and given that this is something that's been going for so long and hasn't come to fruition, perhaps we can advance that conversation in a different avenue. So with that, I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. So next up on our agenda, we move to the next item, which is 9.3. So this is the District of Squamish building bylaw number 1822, 2004. This is amendment bylaw. This is the low carbon step code building bylaw update. And we're swapping out staff for this topic. The floor is yours when you're ready.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Ian Picketts. I'm the Manager of Sustainability and Climate Change here at the District of Squamish. My pronouns are he, his, and I can be addressed accordingly. I'm joined by Jonas Balaniskis, our Senior Director of Community Development Planning, Colin McCarthy, our Manager of Building Services, and Jesse Fletcher, our Manager of Current Planning. And we're here to talk to you today about the implementation of the Zero Carbon Step Code. Just to give you some background, as you are well aware, buildings account for a significant portion of our community's GHG emissions, roughly 30% of our community emissions. The Community Climate Action Plan has a strong focus on new buildings, and designing new buildings to be efficient and low carbon is a real stitch in time because they will be around for 50, 75, sometimes over 100 years. And it is much more difficult to retrofit an existing building than to build it as well as possible in the first place. So some actions that we've taken to date. In 2018, Squamish implemented the Energy Step Code into the building bylaw. As of 2021, most residential construction was required to meet Step 4 of the Energy Step Code. Commercial buildings were required to meet Step 3 of the Energy Step Code or Step 2 if a low carbon energy system was installed. In October 2023, Council approved a recommendation to temporarily relax the ESC requirements for Part 3 residential buildings if Zero Carbon Step Code Level 4 was met. In April 2021, the zoning bylaw was amended to include the Low Carbon Incentive Program. This assigns a maximum greenhouse gas intensity, or GHGI, value to different structures and allows proponents to build to the full permitted size if these GHGI targets are met. So there's some strong rationale that's why staff believe that it is important to transition away from the existing low carbon density incentive to the provincial Zero Carbon Step Code. So a few of the reasons are as follows. Firstly, the code is consistent with the BC building bylaw and what other communities are doing in BC. There are established resources and communications. Just one example is available on the right of the screen. Also, the provincial standard puts the onus on establishing, reviewing, and updating the code on the province and not the district. This can be quite tricky because things change. For example, the carbon intensity of BC's energy grid is adjusted from time to time as more coal is imported or not. And without relying on the BC standard, the onus is on staff to update or change the values. Also, the Zero Carbon Step Code includes almost all building forms where the low carbon density program did not. Furthermore, the Zero Carbon Step Code offers prescriptive and performance-based options to meet the standards, as well as permissible maximum greenhouse gas values for some homes. The 4 levels of the Zero Carbon Step Code for Part 9 buildings are illustrated in this table. I won't go over the 4 different levels, but it's helpful to recognize that there are 3 different options for meeting the Zero Carbon Step Code levels. So firstly, this is not on the table, on the figurative table, it's not on the table in the slide, but homes can fall below a lower threshold of GHG emissions and qualify. So this would only apply to very small homes. So if you fall under a minimum threshold, you meet the Zero Carbon Step Code standard. You can also use the prescriptive approach, where the builder simply discloses the equipment that they will install in their homes. Also, you can use a performance approach to compliance. This is when the builder would have to use software to determine the GHGI for some homes, and also for single-family homes, a maximum total GHG quantity that they are allowed to hit. So this would only come into play in a very large single-family home, where a very large home would have to be extremely efficiently designed to meet the top ceiling. Also for Squamish, a no gas covenant will meet these criteria. So it will meet Zero Carbon Step Code Level 4. For Part 3 buildings, only the performance approach is available. So GHGI has to be quantified. One consideration related to Zero Carbon Step Code is the Energy Step Code. As previously mentioned, Squamish has been an early and aggressive adopter of the Energy Step Code, and as of 2021 was at level 4 for most buildings. In October 2023, Council approved a recommendation to temporarily relax the energy step code for Part 3 residential buildings if the zero carbon step code level 4 was met. And this was in response to quite extensive developer feedback that the costs of meeting these were quite prohibitive. Staff assessment is that to address the building community's concerns, it is more appropriate to go forward with a relaxation of the energy step code for a broader range of buildings. It is, of course, best to maximize both efficiency and low carbon energy sources. However, if it is necessary to compromise, staff believe that it is better to do so with regards to efficiency. This approach is supported in the Community Climate Action Plan. Staff are proposing that zero carbon step code level 4 be adopted for all building types with a temporary ESC or energy step code relaxation of 1 step for all building types except for single family homes and duplexes. The recommendations are available on this slide for your reference. Thank you very much, and we welcome feedback and questions.
Okay, thank you. Questions, Councillor Pettingill?
Is it the province that determines when performance versus prescriptive standards are options are available, or is that up to us to decide when those are options for people?
Through the mayor, that is a good question. Our understanding is that the developer can put forward either one. So the prescriptive one is more straightforward and very simple. You can just disclose what you've used, or you can go about the performance approach where you actually do the modeling. So it is up to the developer to do either one, which one they choose. And that is only available for Part 9 homes. And for Part 3, they have to do the performance approach.
And am I understanding correctly, though, for step 3 and performance, we do accept a no gas covenant as proof of performance?
It is our intention to do so. That is what we have proposed to you. Yes.
Okay. And then for those folks that choose performance standard without a no gas covenant, what is our ability or obligation to accept or reject claims about offsetting or renewable natural gas and a lot of the sort of, I'll say, greenwashing type things we hear from fossil sector? Like, do we have to accept that, or can we actually apply some critical analysis to such claims in terms of emissions calculations?
Through the mayor, the provincial information is that so the GHG intensities have to be met, and they are essentially, to meet step 4, you have to reach the carbon intensity of the electrical grid or similar. There is some flexibility with redundant or backup equipment that is permitted, and it can be excluded from the calculation, required that it is equipped with controls, and it is not required to meet the space conditioned requirements. So if they have to be able to meet the temperature thresholds with the low carbon equipment, but they are able to put something like a decorative fireplace in, provided it's not required to meet the heating load.
So sorry, and so that may be a lobbying piece for me. The other one, like for example, say someone, a fossil company introduces a new product and they say, hey, this gas we're selling is offset because of this, so we claim the emissions intensity of our gas is 0 because there's this offsetting. Is that something that we have to accept, or we can apply some critical thinking, or the province tells us how we have to evaluate such claims, or how does that work?
Through the mayor, I have not come across this. It would have to be, my understanding is that to meet that GHG threshold, it would have to be entirely renewable natural gas. And my understanding is that is extremely limited in its availability. So it is a period of time away. I have not, in my research, I have not come across that option being utilized at all.
Right.
Please, yeah.
Through the mayor, this would be similar to when we're looking at the energy step code reports that we see. It takes a very short period of time before you see what it takes to meet things when they're doing the performance-based approach. there are standards that we see. And when our plans reviewers see something that appears to be an anomaly, that immediately becomes a question that goes right back to that certified energy advisor. And we may pursue that. We put a lot of reliance upon the folks that do this work. And at the same time, we do see a lot of them. We do see the anomalies pop up, and sometimes we press the issue if we find something that's really out of alignment. That's how we do that work. But the standards, I can't guarantee this, but what I understand is that the energy advisors are seeing what the GHGI output is of any appliance or any fuel that is coming from the province. That's not something that we would be delving into. We would be looking for where their information had come from. We would pursue that. Things are changing really quickly. It's hard to be on top of everything as it comes down the pipe. We try and keep up.
Let's go around the group, and if your additional question remains unaddressed, I'll come back to you. But go ahead, Councillor Hamilton.
Thanks very much. So the simulation or the modeling that needs to be done to evaluate the GHG emissions, is there a potential for this modeling to be a constraint or a prohibitive cost impact? Or is it sort of as simple as a heat loss calculation that you can get from just about anywhere?
Through the mayor, that's a good question. There is a cost associated with it. However, the prescriptive approach is very simple. They just have to disclose that they're using electric equipment and they get it. Or the no gas covenant also serves to. Part of the reason we allowing for the no gas covenant is to eliminate that inefficiency and that duplication. So there is a cost associated with it, but there are very straightforward ways around it to still meet it. Thank you.
And just to make sure I understand, so in your previous slide, you said single family homes were exempt from or were required to, sorry, could you go back to I just missed it there, the previous slide. Yeah. So part 9 buildings, single family and duplex, proposed temporary energy step code relaxation is none. So they're still required to be at energy step code 4. Independent of whether they are all electric or not. Is that correct? What's the motivation for that? For not allowing the single family home to reduce in energy step code?
Through the mayor, that's a good question. In interaction with the building community, we understand that it's the larger buildings that meeting the highest levels of the energy step code, the costs are quite significant. Also, from staff's point of view, these part 9 buildings we want to continue to push for those to be as efficient as possible because they are a little less carbon, they're a little less low carbon by their nature, being larger forms, etc. But mostly it's in response to the building community's feedback that meeting the high energy step code of the part 3 buildings and the larger part 9 buildings is what is very difficult from a cost point of view. Thank you.
Okay, I'd wonder if the building community is more focused on the part 3 buildings than they are on part 9 buildings, and perhaps that's why the lobbying is coming in there. But I accept the rationale that keeping a high energy step code is still a positive thing. Although, yeah, I would be satisfied if single family and duplex were to come down to step 3 as well, along with multifamily.
Councillor French.
Thank you, Mayor. Is there another and separate presentation for the zoning bylaw, or is there just one presentation on this tonight?
Through the mayor, there is just one presentation.
All right. So in going through all of this, I see that the cottage cluster has been decimated, removed, annihilated. Could you talk a little bit about what happened there?
Thank you, through the mayor. So as part of the I'm going to say SMO again, but the Bill 44 update, the only remaining RS2 lots are within Brackendale, and the cottage cluster form is not feasible there because of the flood risk. So this was an opportunity to clean that up. Staff will be reviewing the RS2 and RS1 feasibility for density as part of the next part of this project and be addressing Brackendale more holistically. But we know at this time that the cottage cluster is not feasible. So.
Okay, that makes sense. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Other questions? I think I'm okay. So, Councillor Pettingill, you had a question. Was it addressed or? Okay, go ahead.
Just sort of wondering. I take it that enforcement, like we do an inspection and sort of validate things, I guess, before occupancy or whenever that touch point is. But subsequent, if someone tries to or decides to retrofit gas infrastructure after a no gas covenant and so on, is this follow the process of the rest of our enforcement of someone have to sort of see and complain, and then we would investigate? And is that how sort of enforcement would generally work?
Through the mayor, any work that's undertaken that is not compliant with the bylaw, not every piece of work requires a building permit from the District of Squamish, but any work that does, if there's a non-compliance that came to our attention, we would follow up with that and would take the steps necessary, which would be a fine and potentially a notice on title for non-compliance with the code or the building bylaw, which often comes along with a request from council to at a further time direct the corporate officer to pursue an injunction. That's what we do with non-compliance as with the building bylaw.
And then just a little bit related, so I assume from this then also, to the degree there was non-compliance, it would be the building owner that would take the consequences of that. We wouldn't have tools to look at an installer or a fuel distributor or something like that. It would be building owner, and that's sort of as far as our jurisdiction goes.
Through the mayor, that would be a question I would want to ask our legal advisors. To this time, we have not, as I recall, I don't think we have pursued an installer. We have pursued an installer for conducting work where a permit is required. Yes, we have, in fact. If a permit was required from the District of Squamish, both an installer and the building owner, anyone who allows or anyone who acts or allows for the action to happen, I believe is how that language is within our building bylaw. Does that answer the question?
Okay. Any additional questions? Seeing none, I'm going to move the first piece. So this is the District of Squamish Building Bylaw number 1822-2004 Amendment Bylaw for the Low Carbon Step Code Building Bylaw number 3039-2024. I'll move the staff recommendation, second by Councillor Hamilton. Thank you for bringing this forward. I think this streamlines, as much as there's lots of questions about something we haven't interacted with yet. I found the answers to the questions about what those next steps and all the what ifs could be. So, compelling. But I do think that that this is totally appropriate course of action. And thank you for the work performed on this so far. I'm happy to support. I've got Councillor Pettingill.
Yeah, I'll just say thanks to staff for this. Overall, I feel like there's a few holes in it for my comfort, but I understand this is the tool the province have given us. I think it's probably better than, stronger than what we had with the incentive program. Although, to be honest, I was very proud of that incentive program and I bragged about it all the time. So I'm kind of sad that we're replacing it. So I just wanted to, sort of acknowledge that loss, but appreciate this new work. So thank you.
Thank you for that. Any other comments on this? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Council, we have the second piece of this. Councillor Anderson?
Yes, I'll move the second piece of motion.
Seconded by Councillor French. Would you like to speak to it in any way? Yep, go ahead.
Yes, Mayor Herford. I would like to speak to a couple of aspects of the staff report, namely the engagement section and the prepared for the future, the strategic plan alignment. I note that in the engagement section, there's reference to very low participation, disappointingly low for the Brennan Park open meeting held in May. And I'd like to address a solution for that. I think we need to give attention to identifying, fostering, facilitating, and mapping out our green building sector. Cluster, if you like. We have a project that is, well, we have here in town several firms, and we have had these firms around or firms like them over the past decade and more that are very literate in this field. They are involved in delivering very innovative building components and system solutions to the new build market in particular, firms that we can be proud of here in Squamish, and most of us may be able to name a couple of them. We have in our financial plan in the projects proposed for a project proposed by the Economic Development Department, a sector impact assessment, green economy. It's proposed for 2027, and maybe we should consider advancing that forward. We need to give attention to building up our local tradespeople, trades training, and local supply chain, especially for multi-unit construction. I think it's all part of the same world as what we're talking about with this initiative this evening. We need, in the prepared for the future, action item 4.2 in Council's strategic plan to increase economic activity in the core enabling and emerging economic sectors. Well, innovative construction and wood products are named throughout our documents, and we should give attention to them. And I think it'll bounce back with rewards for as we move to implement the initiative that's been presented to us this evening. So there is a local economic development aspect to this field I think that we should be considering as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Just a reminder, running tight on time on those comments, but they're all great. So thank you. But just a caution as we try to stay on time. Any other comments on this? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. We're not going to take a quick. We'll take a recess. So we'll take a 10-minute recess. We'll reconvene at 8 o'clock. Give us a chance to stretch. It's been a couple hours here, and we'll reconvene in 10 minutes or 8 o'clock. Thank you. So welcome back to the regular business meeting. We are on item the loan authorization bylaw section of this evening's agenda. Ms. Boxford, I believe, is introducing the topic. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. So Ms. Souza cannot be here tonight. However, I can introduce the topic if it's the will of the Mayor. Excellent. Okay. So at the May 21st, 2024 special business meeting, Council gave 3 readings to 6 loan authorization bylaws, which are in front of you tonight. Prior to the 3rd reading on May 21st, the district consulted provincial staff and were provided with guidance that the omission of a maximum term would be permitted on the loan authorization bylaws. However, following the 3rd reading, the bylaws were sent to the Inspector of Municipalities for approval. And the Inspector of Municipalities has indicated subject to or pursuant to Section 179(2) of the Community Charter that the loan authorization bylaws must be revised to include maximum term for which the debentures may be issued before the bylaws can be approved. So a maximum term of 20 years, as outlined in the May 21st report to Council, has been included on all 6 bylaws before Council tonight. And staff are seeking that Council rescind the loan authorization bylaws and provide 3 readings for the amended bylaws. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, and off to the races. So moved by Councillor French, second by Councillor Hamilton. Are we going to do comments on any of these just as a group? No, I'm not seeing any. Just, okay, we're going to go, we're going to do the hurry up on this one then. Okay, moved by Councillor French, second by Councillor Hamilton. All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. That was number 3058. And we're going down the list to 3064, which is moved by Councillor Pettingill, second by Councillor Hamilton. All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. We're on to 3066, which I will move, and it's seconded by Councillor Hamilton. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. We're on to 3068, moved by Councillor Pettingill, seconded by Councillor Anderson. All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. We're on to 3070, moved by Councillor French, seconded by Councillor Hamilton. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. And the final one is 3071, moved by Councillor Hamilton, seconded by Councillor Anderson. All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. So now we have their matching replacements to work through. So the first one is 3058, and this is for 3rd reading, just to be clear as to what we're doing here as we're moving quickly. Moved by Councillor Hamilton, second by Councillor French. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. On to 3064, moved by Councillor Pettingill, second by Councillor Anderson. All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. We're on to number 3066, moved by Councillor French, seconded by Councillor Anderson. All in favor? Any motion carries unanimously. Thank you. 3068, moved by Councillor Hamilton, second by Councillor Pettingill. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, everybody. We're on to 3070, moved by Councillor Hamilton, second by Councillor Anderson. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. And the final one, which is 3071, I will move, and second by Councillor French. And I'll just speak to this one briefly as we wrap this up. Just thank you for bringing this forward, and I'm happy that we can get it over the line. And administrative in nature, but obviously is important. So that's why you've seen unanimous support throughout this. So thank you to my council colleagues for joint participation in that rapid fire session. And I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. So now we're on to adoptions for this evening. So we have the first one is District of Squamish zoning bylaw number 2200-2011 amendment bylaw. This relates to small scale multi-unit housing, and this is number 3036-2024. And I will move adoption, and seconded by Councillor French. All in favor? Motion carries. Next, we have District of Squamish zoning bylaw 2200-2011 amendment bylaw. This is the matter we dealt with earlier tonight, Townhall at Paradise Valley, and is number 2974-2023. Moved by Councillor Hamilton, second by Councillor French. All in favor? Motion carries. Okay, that so now we're on to item 10, which is staff reports. We have which we have none. We had no late agenda items. We had no correspondence action requested. Correspondence referred from consent agenda. I believe this is where we would do the staff, the memos that were pulled would be here. Is that what you're trying to remind me of?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So we had, so I just wanted to, so I pulled item C1, which is the grants and partnership policy review. And I just had, I know that we don't want to get into a big discussion on this. We need staff for that. My question was, the timing's starting to creep from, I think, what we expected, which is why I believe one of the drivers for the memo to update council. And I just wanted to double check that the timing that we're seeing now, like, is this something we're going to be able to work with in our budgeting process for 2025, or is this timing effectively put this process not really something that the community can engage with for the budget going forward? That's the sort of that one of those things where, like, is a month delay here, a year delay in implementation? Is that where we are? Kind of, that's where I'm assessing we are. Can someone speak to how, like, if we were to adopt whatever the recommendations end up being, like, is this something practically that the community could expect to be implemented in 2025, or is this the timing just not going to be viable for that?
Thank you, through the mayor. Megan Latimer, General Manager of Community Services. At this point, we are still awaiting the report from the consultant, which we expect to have at the end of the summer and bringing forward to council in September. That does make it very tight for the budget process this year. So realistically, we would expect to see implementation or consideration implementation in 2026.
I think that over time, council's sort of put a lot of things into this bucket, or aspired to in some of our conversations, perhaps too much, which is maybe the driver for the longer timeline. But I just wonder what, if there's anything that can be done to move that timeline, to advance that timeline. I know that in and of itself, it was a strategic priority, but it also is a mechanism to achieve other strategic priorities. So yeah, the timing piece, the update, there's really good work and good process I see there, but I'm just challenged with the timing. Is there anything we can do with that at this point in time?
Thank you, through the mayor. We are constrained by the consultants' timelines. When we went to RFP, the consultants that bid on this, they all experienced the same pressure. I understand there's several other communities that are looking to do similar work. So there's lots of demand for similar types of consultants. So we are subject to their timeline, I'm afraid.
Okay, thank you. So with that, I'll move receipt of the memo. Second by Councillor French, and comments on this. I'll take first swing at it. I just and I guess the the timing is unfortunate, but I'm happy to see the work advancing, and I think that this is an important strategic piece in and of itself, but I think is also a mechanism that can really advance some of those other goals. So I look forward to seeing that back to us as early as possible, so we can contemplate its whatever the recommended policy ends up being, and can move forward with the community in a transparent way to partner with to achieve our collective goals. So stronger together as a community, and I see this as an important piece of that. So thanks to everyone for work on it so far. I had Councillor Anderson. I'll come down this row, and then so Councillor Anderson, comments?
Yes, I had contemplating fielding or putting forward a question on this, but I'll just make an observation that when we talk about a landscape analysis of grant and partnership programs, we talk about in-kind. Some of our nonprofits are pointing out that we hope that there's not support types, categories that fall through the cracks, like leases. Some of our nonprofits, their relationship, the support we give them is via a lease. And we do have some issues with processing leases and their renewal. One example is the Logger Sports Grounds. and it hosts a number of other nonprofits there, and it's just one of the ways we support our community of nonprofits, and we shouldn't let it escape attention. The other thing is that it's been brought forward is that sometimes we rent out space for containers for storage. I guess my point is that let's be comprehensive and map out thoroughly what are the different ways we give support to our local community partners. And sometimes they might not be so easily noticed, but we'll see as the project gets advanced and it comes back to us where we can address these things. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. Go ahead, Councillor Hamilton.
Thanks very much to staff for the work and for the putting forward the RFP and finding the consultants to do this work. And thank you, Mayor Herford, for pointing out this time gap, something I hadn't noticed. It does bring me considerable concern that this is something that we've identified within our strategic plan, and now we're in a situation where we may not be able to act on it because there's a misalignment of the timing of a consultant group, which I respect and understand, with what happens to be our budget process. I'd be really interested to know if there's anything we can do to implement something within our budget process to make sure we can maintain momentum on this project even before we see the final report. We're aware that this project is going to require budget following the report. I recognize we don't know exactly how much, but I'd be very interested to see if there are any mechanisms we can put in place to ensure that this project can continue moving forward through 2025, because I fear that if it has to wait for the 2026 to receive any additional funding, there's going to be an enormous gap where this project will lose momentum or velocity, depending on how you want to put it.
Okay, thank you. Yep, go ahead, Councillor Pettingill.
Just two things. I heard a bit from staff, a bit more in depth about what this work is entailing, and I'm really quite excited. My thought was similar to Councillor Hamilton's. I wonder if there's a way we can set aside some budget so we can move forward with something when it's ready, and leave that to our budget discussions to sort out how realistic that is.
Yeah, sometimes I'm trying not to, there's this temptation every time someone has a comment for me to comment on that comment. I'm going to let it go there and I won't speculate, but I'm happy to hear that there's, across the board, there's interest in advancing this in the most robust way that we can with our constraints. So that's sort of what I'm hearing, and I'm going to take that away, and I'm sure staff's hearing that as well. Any comments on this from anyone over here? Okay, thank you. So again, I moved receipt, sort of calling question on receipt. All in favor? Yep, motion carries unanimously. Thank you. And then was it Councillor Pettingill? Did you pull the Youth Climate Corps BC and District of Squamish Partnership update memo? Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. And I met the folks that are working for this program or running it. Well, both actually. At the engagement, I'm actually really quite excited about this. I had a lot of questions at the public engagement from people around, looking for more clarity and comments about how we're slicing and dicing our budgeting numbers in different reports, like putting things in the capital versus operational budget and so on and so forth. And so there's some discussion there, but people want to understand the data in different ways. And I raised that because in particular, I got a few questions about, like, I want to understand that you guys are spending enough on the environment and so on. And I think this is in terms of getting youth excited and active in government and helping the public understand how we're spending money and focusing on things. I think there's a lot of value. So I would love to see just a quick 10-minute presentation from these folks. I would, if it's seconded, I would move that this item be referred to agenda planning to consider coming back for a brief presentation, maybe at a committee of the whole or something.
Just before I entertain a seconder on this, is there someone that could speak to sort of this? I think is sort of setting out what is sort of aims to happen with this project, but is there like a conclusion of the project reporting out piece that's anticipated for this that would come back to COW, or a presentation that in due course, or is this something that requires a special motion, which I think we're talking about the same. Is that what you're talking about, Councillor Pettingill?
I was actually sort of hoping to build some excitement and awareness sort of going into the program as opposed to a summary. I think a summary at the end might be great too, but I'm really trying to, would like to really spotlight just as we roll this out, was my thought. And again, just brief, like 10 minutes, not an in-depth hour-long discussion, but.
Okay. So I had the question just to, I'd like, if anyone can answer the question, then we'll go back to the motion. Do we know what the intended next contact point with council is? I'm getting some excitement. We want to support. Just, yeah, any insight on that at this point?
Through the mayor, at the moment, there's no plan to come to council with an update. The staff were planning to provide updates to the community through social media, through newsletters, et cetera, through all the normal channels. But certainly staff are available to arrange that through agenda planning.
Okay, I'm just, Councillor, you've made a motion and it hasn't been seconded yet. I just want to caution that like our agenda time is booking out into likely October at this point, so or something like that. So it could be a challenge, and I want to make sure that things that are getting to us are, require our attention or decision. So perhaps there's another way we can support this initiative. I agree that this is important, but I just want to caution putting things into agenda planner at this point is a challenge to meet that without bumping something that's requires our direction and or decision. So that'd be my caution, but at the discretion, at the will of council. So if your motion stands, if there's a seconder. Okay, so let's figure out going forward a way to help these folks, and I won't eliminate having them come to council to do a presentation as one of those options, but I'm hearing support for this work and a way to sort of hold that up. So we'll take that away and see if there's something that we can do as a group or individuals to achieve that. Are you moving? Question?
Well, I have a thought. In agenda planning meetings that I've been in previously, more than once, during the agenda planning meeting, we have found ourselves in a situation where the discussion is, oh, we could put more into this meeting, but none of the staff reports that we want to get to are ready. So could we make this an on deck standby?
Let me take this away. This is a great thought. Thank you. I'll take this away and I'll discuss with staff the best way to do that. But I totally know that sort of category that you're talking about. And so let's just do that as a takeaway. So I'll move receipt of the memo, and then we'll figure out how we can best support them. Seconded by Councillor French. I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. So now we're on to, we didn't have any minutes referred or business arising from the minutes, no committee minutes reports, any notice of motion, council? Seeing none. Council in staff camera announcements, we do not have. Unscheduled public attendance, we do not have any today. Open question period. Is there anyone in the room that would like clarification related to agenda items? Seeing no hands. Is this something that's available to the folks online as well? I've never had that yet, but okay. But hypothetically, if someone was live, they could. Okay. There you go. It's okay. We're just building knowledge as we go here. Council or staff announcements. Is there anyone that would like to get us going with this? Councillor French.
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to share that over the course of Friday and Saturday, June 7th and 8th, mine safety experts from all over BC gathered here for the 66th British Columbia Provincial Mine Rescue and First Aid Competition. The competition itself was held at Britannia Mine Museum, followed by an evening of awards presentations at the Railway Museum of BC. Lots of museum action in all this. So I attended the awards evening. Squamish Nation Councillor Sumquat was there with Kalkalath. They performed a few traditional songs during the night, and the awards made it clear to me that those who are in the mine rescue industry rely a great deal on teamwork, the pride and the camaraderie that I saw in the Roundhouse that evening was inspiring. So I just want to make sure that you are all aware that that happened, and send congratulations to all of those folks in that mine rescue sector who came and had a Squamish/Britannia experience.
Okay, thank you. Any other announcements, Council? Go ahead, Councillor Anderson.
On June 6th, Councillor Hamilton and I had the opportunity to attend a seminar sponsored by the Chamber of Commerce, Tourism, Squamish, and the Downtown Business Improvement Association on the concept of fast electric passenger ferries between Squamish and Vancouver. It was very interesting, and in the end of the discussion, there was some kind of consensus that with 3,000 commuters on the highway every day to Vancouver, that there's some portion of that that leads to the idea that maybe there's a compelling package for this option for transit. It was reviewed that a Squamish route is in the realm of new technology to be tested, not least because of all the deadheads out in the ocean and the marine mammals we want to be careful of as well. So the people are looking to test new ideas, but finally, it's something for our transportation master plan and our waterfront planning to catch up on and consider. Fast electric passenger ferries. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Pettingill.
A couple things, and I feel like I'm forgetting an important one, but I'll do what I can. Last week, I was had the opportunity as acting mayor to attend a pole awakening at the RCMP station. And this was a pole. The carving was led by Seappleton, Art Harry, and it was carved by a number of youth. And so there's a ceremony to wake it up. And this was a program that the RCMP secured a grant to help run it. And it was just an incredible pole. You walk into that place and you could smell the cedar, which for me smells like home. I grew up in a cedar log home. And so anytime I walk into a space and I smell that, it feels really good. But it was a lot of the same folks that were at the Ocean Park opening, Oceanfront Park opening. And that was just, that 2 days really stuck with me. And then I was able to kind of relive it. And just the pride of the kids who made this happen, and the support all around is just fantastic to see. It's a really, really exciting time in Squamish to see, I think, a real sort of awakening and recognition of how fantastic this place is and what Squamish Nation has helped this place become. I don't remember, well, we had our engagement with the district. I think this past Saturday was the fourth in the series of 4. Lots of great conversations with people. I saw the Sikh parade from a distance because I was doing the engagement for most of it, but there was so much activity downtown. It was just incredible. So thank you to everyone that took the time to come out and have a chat with us and ask some questions and share their thoughts about priorities. I rushed over to, and it's disappeared from my calendar, but at the airport, there was a big event where you got to see what was going on. They gave free plane rides to, when I spoke to them, 150 kids, and the kids were just so excited, and the planes were going in and out, and really neat custom built planes. And so everyone just had a fantastic day there. And then I'll just, it's a little place in my heart, Ampton the Park. We are starting sort of a practice, make sure all the gear works and so on this Thursday. So it may not be perfect, but it'll be your first opportunity to come out for the summer and start seeing some local acts perform, and I look forward to that.
Great, thank you. Any other updates? Oh, Ms. Glenday.
Thank you. Through the mayor, I don't often have announcements, but I want to share with council and the community that's watching that Chayton Cower, who works in our legislative services team as our privacy officer and FOI coordinator, has been working with the Local Government Management Association Advancing Equity Working Group. And this is volunteer work that she does on her own time. She's been asked to speak at a number of different conferences, spreading great work around inclusivity, diversity, equity, and accessibility. Last week at the LGMA conference, she was awarded the Professional Award for Volunteer Service by the LGMA.
Wow. That's awesome. Thank you very much for that update. I'm continually impressed by staff's not just professionalism and as they show up to do their day job, but the extracurricular stuff that really advances these issues more broadly. I think is really worth celebrating. And thank you for sharing that. Any other updates before I go into mine? I've got an hour just to like really keep us here all night. But no, all joking aside, it's been a really, really busy time. And I think Councillor Pettingill's acting mayor this month, and we're just past the midway mark of the month. But I know you've had lots of pieces, and none of us can be in multiple places at the same time. So thank you for attending, in particular the poll raising. I had a chance to see that project sort of partway through its progress when I was there for the during, I think it was Mayor for the Day activities, and it was great to see what it looked like then, but also to see the photos of what it progressed to. So thank you for that, and I think this highlights the our local RCMP's efforts to work in a new way and to move forward in a good way, to use that term. So we had our final youth council meeting, and so I'm just going to try to keep my calendar straight here. So this was on the 5th of June, and the final meeting is youth council sits around in this room around the horseshoe, and we have an audience, a packed audience, unlike this evening, of their parents and caregivers and people and their invited guests, and they did a presentation around what youth council was and what it meant to them, and receive a letter from myself with letter of recommendation that recognizes their hard work. So it concludes the session of youth council, and I think it is one of my, no offense to anyone that has any meetings with me over any time, but that is my favorite meeting of the month, is generally the youth council, and watching these folks really grapple with what they'd like to see the future of the community. Some will have opportunity to reapply as for an additional year, and some have timed out as well. So it'd be great to see how I know that the future is in good hands with the leaders that have been coming through that program. Following that, I spent some time in Calgary at FCM, which is the Federation of Canadian Municipalities conference, and before I left, we heard about the water main break that we had here in Squamish, and I knew that we were in good hands with the professionals that we had on the case, and of course the acting mayor that I left to deal with anything that flowed from that problem. But upon landing in Calgary, as I turned my phone back on, the first thing I got was an emergency alert around the issue in Calgary. So besides having a front row seat for a large municipality grappling with a big crisis, it was great to share time with my colleagues from across the country and matters related to the federal government. It was my first time attending, and it was really interesting to hear what folks are dealing with across the country, and connecting with colleagues. So that was great. Then this weekend, on Saturday, I was lucky enough to attend the Sikh Parade, the 17th annual parade, and it was just, I don't know if everyone has had a chance to witness this, but just the spirit of giving and inclusiveness, and just the generosity of that group is really really something to behold. We hear about community service and it's sort of selfless acts, but wow, it was something else. Really fed the community, and the generosity was amazing. And I would like to say that we did have I was lucky enough to be invited to speak, and I as always, I did my best to represent this group in a good way. But MP Patrick Weiler presented something that I thought was quite special, was the basically presented the Charter of Rights and Freedoms in Punjabi to the group from the Gurdwara in a very moving presentation. I thought it was an excellent, not just a gesture, but really backs up the commitments that we've all made as a nation and recognizing that. So I thought that was a really, really positive thing, and yeah, beyond a gesture, but it was really, really touching. And then yesterday, I attended a funeral. There was a prominent member of the Squamish Nation, Beeb, as he was known, passed away recently, and the nation gathered to commemorate that. And for those of you that didn't have an opportunity to meet him, we hear stuff of legends often, and I think that he falls into that category. So you may have seen him around with a large cowboy hat, a huge smile, and a perhaps never buttoned shirt. Just never, despite snowstorm, come snow, rain, sleet, whatever. And just to hear folks tell stories of his now legend was quite touching, and I was just felt really special to be a part of that and to support the Lewis family with their loss. So my condolences to the loss of a true legend. And I think I'll end my comments there. So it's been an action-packed time, and thank you to Acting Mayor for picking up the pieces I wasn't been able to catch, but we're only halfway there, so there's more to come. That's the end of my announcements. So we have no motion to close. We're looking for a motion to terminate, which I almost gave to Councillor Stoner, but Councillor Hamilton and seconded by Councillor French. All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you very much for all your work today, everybody.